It's medium format time. I knew it wouldn't be too long before my gear acquisition syndrome kicked in again, and lo and behold, it finally has. I have new cameras once again. It all started when I went to a flea market and chanced upon a vintage camera for only 100 Singapore dollars. It was a Seagull, or Hi-O for my Chinese speaking folks out there, and yeah, how could I pass up on a fully functional camera at that price? I might as well be robbing the seller, I told myself as I purchased it, and just like that, my medium format cherry was popped. For those of you who only know film by these little canisters, there are actually plenty of other formats that the overpriced celluloid comes in, so you can waste money on taking shitty pictures even faster than before. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting to you a spool of medium format film, otherwise known as 120 film. It's big, way bigger than 35mm, and as a result the negatives you shoot are also bigger. And unlike what she tells you, bigger is better because bigger negatives mean higher resolution, less noise, and better image quality across the board. That sounds totally up my alley, and I've always wanted to step out of my 35mm bubble, so now that I had the Seagull, I finally could. But wait, you may be asking, why are there two lenses on the camera? Is it so that you can take two pictures at the same time? To which I say, no, you silly fool. Cameras like these are known as twin lens reflex cameras, or TLR cameras for short. Most film cameras are SLR, or single lens reflex, and there's only one lens through which you compose and shoot your image. Those cameras have a mirror which directs light into the viewfinder for you to see, and only flips up out of the way to expose the image when you take a picture. However, TLRs are different. As the name suggests, there are two lenses on the camera. You compose your image on the top lens, known as the viewing lens, and actually take the picture on the bottom lens, known as the taking lens. The two lenses do separate jobs. Because of this, there are no large moving parts in a TLR, and taking a picture on one is basically silent. So when you pop open the top of a TLR, you can see what the camera is seeing through this piece of glass known as the ground glass. And shooting on ground glass is pretty special. It feels like you're holding a three-dimensional cube of light. Seeing the world around you through it is quite the experience. The only quirky thing is that ground glasses flip the image, so what you are seeing is actually a mirror image of reality, which is some Doctor Strange shit that my tiny primal brain is not ready for. It's actually very trippy and makes composing a different experience, to say the least. Enter the Seagull. Here's a quick walkthrough on how it operates. The focus is adjusted using this knob, and as you can see, the entire front panel of the camera slides forward and backward. This is how the camera focuses the image. If you want to focus more precisely, you can press this button to open the magnifying glass, and now you can see your image more clearly. The camera settings can be found on the front, and this lever charges up the shutter, while this button fires it off. The film is loaded in from the back, just the way I like it. Then you turn the knob over here to advance the film as you go. This is the iffy part. The knob doesn't automatically stop your winding. You're supposed to open these little windows on the back of the camera and watch out for the numbers printed on the backing paper of the film. Other than that, the knob is free to turn, so to speak. Also, all TLRs shoot 6x6 images, which is to say, negatives that are 6cm by 6cm large. Compare that to a 35mm negative, which is only 3.6 by 2.4cm large. The size of the negatives they're shooting is considerably bigger here, and each roll of 120 film only gets you 12 shots on 6x6, so yeah. If you thought 35mm film was bad, welcome to the world of medium format. Let's cut to the day where I tested out this camera. During my shoot with Adriel in the park, as covered in my previous video, we also put a roll of Gold 200 through the Seagull to test it out. It was our first time using this camera, so we were testing out its functions and getting used to the ground glass. We took some pictures and, well, let's just say we found out why the camera cost only $100. Turns out, Seagull as a brand is actually a ripoff of other companies that made TLR cameras. Like, back in the 1950s, where there were only these sorts of cameras around, there were companies like Rolleiflex that made the legendary industry-standard TLR cameras, and the Seagull is literally supposed to be the Chinese AliExpress version of that. And while the camera technically works properly, the images are just so damn bad that it becomes unusable. Look at this! It looks like someone glued a 3-strength Pro Mist filter onto the lens and then pissed all over it. There's so much flaring and hazing, and the image is totally washed out even though the lighting conditions weren't harsh at all. Like, what's the point of shooting 120 film if the pictures look like this? The extra resolution is being hampered by the dog water optics. It's not a good look for the Seagull, which is a shame because the TLR form factor was kinda growing on me. I got used to the ground glass and I enjoyed using it actually. The world just looks so much nicer through it. So as I sat at home staring at my shitty negatives, I asked myself, so what do I do now that I realize the Rolleiflex ripoff isn't as good as a Rolleiflex? Buy a Rolleiflex, of course. Right off the bat, we can tell that the Seagull and the Rolleiflex look pretty alike, and the way that they work is pretty much the same. Ground glass, a magnifying glass and split prism for focusing, but there are a few key differences between them, and besides the obviously better build quality, the most important change would be the lens, or the lenses rather. The Rolleiflex's viewing lens has a larger f2.8 aperture, meaning that the image I see on the ground glass is brighter, which is helpful. And more importantly, the taking lens, which is the one that is actually responsible for capturing the images, is a proper step up. We have a 75mm f3.5 Zeiss Tessa lens, and yeah, it's the real deal. f3.5 may not seem so impressive, but it's actually considered pretty fast for medium format. If you do the conversions, it's something like a 38mm f1.8 on 35mm format. More importantly, the optics are supposedly amazing. In my recent trip to Hong Kong, I brought the Rolleiflex along as well to put a test roll through it and make sure all's good. It did not begin well because the light meter on the side decided to go from a state of being partially broken to totally broken. Well, I wasn't planning on using it anyway, but it was ugly, so I removed the meter altogether and retrofitted a literal bottle cap in its place. Other than that though, I was really hyped to put the camera through its paces. I guess now's a good time to show you how to load this camera. As it turns out, it also wasn't as easy as I thought. You're supposed to be able to easily insert the roll of film, but I couldn't get it in even after a few tries. It was my first time and I was nervous. Yeah, and definitely don't do that. If all my images from this roll come out well, I guess we know why. Once you finally get it in, you stuff the end of the backing paper into the other spool and turn the handle to create tension. Regular tension, not sexual tension. And just wind the film till the arrows reach the red line. Then you close the film door and continue winding until the camera stops you, and there we go, we're at frame 1. So as you can see, unlike the Seagull, the Rolleiflex uses a handle to wind the film, and it's smart, so the mechanics automatically stop you when you've cranked it enough. It's the same thing for every aftershot. You crank the handle to both advance the film and also charge up the shutter. This whole system is nicer and simpler, I feel, compared to just the knob that was present on the Seagull. It gives me less things to think about, which is good because I'm not very good at thinking. Anyway, once I loaded the Rolleiflex, I went to town, literally, not sexually, and shot a bunch of bangers on Delta 3200, which is a black and white film stock. So why exactly am I shooting black and white in a city as vibrant as Hong Kong? Yeah, don't worry, it's not just you. Your display is not broken. There are indeed spots all over the images. They're kinda messed up. I'll explain why later. When it was time to unload the camera, I was nervous. Like, coming from 35mm film, I never quite understood how you can just wind the film around a spool and call it a day. Anyway, I guess the inventor of 120 film must have been freaky as hell, because to seal up the roll, you need to give it a good sloppy lick, which is, what the hell, it's freaky as hell. I'm just trying to seal up my film, man. Once I got back to Singapore, I wanted to find a better solution than the bottle cap to replace the meter, and I realized that an Ilford 35mm film roll lid fit perfectly, almost as if it was made just to serve this purpose. Very satisfying indeed. The camera was basically perfect now, except that the focus dial was in freedom units for those people who don't know what the a kilometer is. Anyway, one specific feature about this Rolleiflex model is that it doesn't only shoot 6x6 images. There is a masking kit sold separately, consisting of a masking piece and some viewfinder masks, and what it does is that it crops the light window hitting the film, allowing you to shoot 16 slightly smaller 4:3 aspect ratio images instead of 12 square images. This smaller 4:3 image format is known as 645 because the negatives are 6 cm by 4.5 cm large. And here's the crazy part. When you insert the masking kit, it activates some mechanism which tells the camera you're using the masking kit, so it actually changes the frame counter window to show 16 instead of 12. And because the camera is using less film each time to take a picture, the camera compensates accordingly and winds less so that it takes up less film. The camera just knows, and it's quite crazy how seamless the whole thing is. Plus, this camera is fully clockwork. It doesn't take batteries, everything is powered by just springs and levers and the action of cranking the camera. Crazy how this ancient artifact, literally made in 1958, still has these genius features that continue to work like more than 70 years on. Truly an example of German engineering simply being superior. So, in the spirit of testing the camera in its 645 mode, I loaded in another roll of Delta 3200, this time to shoot this fancy exhibition going on at the National Design Center. The low light conditions pretty much made shooting ISO 3200 the only option. So yeah, by now I'm sure you're dying to know why these images have spots all over them. Like, why do they look moldy, bruh? So as it turns out, Delta 3200 in the 120 format specifically has this issue where the film sticks to the backing paper, and when you try to separate the two pieces, the backing paper kind of rips out some of the emulsion as you go, resulting in this chickenpox looking ass effect on my images. So yeah, I'm never going to use this film stock again. But it's too late, the images are kinda ruined already. At least it could pass off as an artistic choice, I guess. Like, it kinda fits the surreal nature of these shots. I don't know, that's what I tell myself to cope. I also headed back to my alma mater, which was having its annual Mid-Autumn Festival celebrations. It's really hyped, and here's what went down that day. These shots are pretty cool, I guess. The gritty black and white makes them look like vintage, which kinda works for the atmosphere I was shooting. But chickenpox aside, I realized that these images were never making full use of the Rolleiflex's potential. Because Delta 3200 is a grainy ass film stock, so we can't really use it to assess the quality of the Zeiss lens we have on the Rolleiflex. So yeah, it was time to shoot some proper color, low ISO film in the daytime to see what this thing is capable of. I started by loading up some expired Fuji Pro 160 NS and shot it at ISO 100 to account for the expiration. And what do you know? These pictures really pop. The Rolleiflex is truly goated, everything looks amazing. On this other day, I headed to this secluded cottagecore place to finish off the roll. The Fuji greens really seem to be showing in these images. I love it. Then I moved on to this area which had a bunch of art exhibitions going on, and it was vibes. The absolutely delicious lighting also really came through for this picture, and honestly, without it, this picture wouldn't be half as nice. It looks so painterly. And let's take a moment as well to appreciate the insane resolution of a 6x6 negative. It's kinda crazy. There we go. This is literally the sort of place that you see in a horror movie, and then the characters promptly die afterwards. And we're just here photographing it. Alright, let's wrap this video up. I think we can safely say that the Rolleiflex is miles better than the Seagull. It produces great images and actually makes full use of the larger format of film that we are using for it. There's a lot to say about this camera though. I never really expected myself to fall in love with TLRs, but here we are. There are annoying things about a TLR camera that I thought would be turn-offs for me. Things like the inverted image on the ground glass, or the parallax error that results from the two lenses being separated from each other. Like, I wouldn't know if there was something covering the taking lens because I would be looking through the viewing lens. But those things never really became real issues, and using this camera has only been delightful. It's beautiful, not to mention compact for a medium format system, and it's just a joy to carry around. It's also a step away from the classic SLR design language of cameras that is everywhere today. Like, even modern mirrorless cameras resemble an SLR style, but this TLR camera is just a refreshing step away from that. It's uniquely different, a product from a bygone era. The square format also definitely pushes me out of my comfort zone and encourages me to think out of the 6cm by 6cm box. Other than that though, this camera is pretty affordable. There exists a wide range of Rolleiflexes, and the expensive models like the f2.8 ones can fetch a pretty good price. But the cheaper models like this one are fine. This one cost me 800 Singapore dollars, which is 600 Freedom dollars. And yeah, that's definitely considered affordable for a medium format system, especially when you consider that it's an all-in-one package. Unlike something like the Hasselblad system where you need to buy film bags or viewfinders or lenses for it, this one is a one-and-done purchase. But yeah, that's it. A fateful encounter in a flea market led me to where I am today with another prized camera possession. It's one that I've come to love and has gotten me started in my medium format journey. The Seagull will have to sit on my shelf as an ornament, oh well, but it did get me into the world of TLR cameras, and this was definitely a fun video to make, which is what it's all about, having fun. I can't wait to see what other adventures of mine this camera will capture, so stay tuned, get subscribed.